Hello, everybody, and a huge welcome to this very special broadcast today. I am Susil Kunwar from Informa Corporate Learning and is excited to have Beverly Honig here with me today to discuss on a very hot topic, how AI is changing contracts. Beverly is a highly experienced business strategist, internationally qualified lawyer, and the CEO of Honeylight Enterprise. She has over 30 years of experience in contract management, procurement, and governance, and is also a seasoned board director and chairman of various public, government, and private boards. As an expert in contracts and procurement, Beverly advises large corporations and government entities on outsourcing and tendering. She is also the author of best-selling business book, Making Contracts Work, and is often commissioned to run tenders on behalf of clients, given her expertise in contracts and contract law. Beverly is also the co-owner of a tech company that uses AI to provide provenance for indigenous artwork using smart contracts to enable artists to sell directly to buyers. So she has first-hand experience on how AI is changing the world of contracts. Okay, so over the next 30 minutes, Beverly will be sharing some valuable insights on how AI is changing contracts and challenge our thinking on these subjects. After that, Beverly and I will be happy to stay online to answer your questions and help you with your specific challenges. So this would be an interesting or interactive webinar, and I would request everyone to participate in polls and type in your questions on the question pane as we go forward. So welcome everyone and welcome to Beverly. Over to you, Beverly.
Thank you, Sushil. Indeed, developments in artificial intelligence is changing rapidly and impacting every bit of our work and lives. As a businesswoman, I find this exciting, but as a lawyer, I find it raises a number of issues. Today, I'm going to discuss with you some of the key benefits of AI for contract management intelligence, like, for example, streamlined performance management, and some governance controls to protect and prevent contract risk causing value leakage. Some of the cases that I published in my book, Making Contracts Work, cover value leaks that occur when we rely on machine intelligence to write our contracts. Artificial intelligence is a very broad term, so I will be diving first in on what it comprises and how it helps with contracts. I'm mindful today that we have quite a broad audience with many companies listening to this webinar, each at different levels of digital and contracting maturity. And that impacts your readiness to use AI for your contracts. So to kick off, I'm starting with a poll question to understand our audience. Over to you, Sushil.
Okay, thank you. Let me launch the first poll.
The question that I'm going to be asking you first off is, in your mind, how mature is your contractual process? Now, there's a choice of 5 different levels of maturity, from inhibiting to world-class. So we can see dynamically that the poll is being used, and we can see dynamically that there is a good spread of maturity, even in the people currently listening to the webinar, with a high proportion, currently 40%, in the optimal maturity level. Now, we can sit down with you and go through this as a well-qualified survey, but it's good to get the lay of the land and see that we have a mixture of people listening from an inhibited level of maturity right through to world-class. And that is why artificial intelligence in contracts needs that level of granularity. As your organization matures in its contract management process, your ability to absorb the benefits of AI for contracts will increase. That, by the way, is compounded positively with the exponential development of AI as an application, developing as we speak, with its maturity increasing every day. Thank you, Sushil. So let me start with the elephant in the room. We've been hearing a lot about ChatGPT. Let's first define artificial intelligence as a developing tool for contracts. And then I'll get on to ChatGPT and others. Artificial intelligence, or some might call it synthetic intelligence. It's the concept of creating smart, intelligent machines So machine learning is a subset of, as you can see on the screen, artificial intelligence that helps us build AI-driven applications. Going further, there's this concept of deep learning, and that is a subset of machine learning that uses vast volumes of data and complex algorithms to train a machine to become intelligent. So in this way, machine learning concerns accuracy and pattern recognition. For example, if you feed your contract documentation into a contract software using artificial intelligence, it could identify relationships between contract data, and it could also detect inconsistencies, or it could create patterns to optimize contract consistency. And that is what I call an efficient use of artificial intelligence. Another example would be using AI to extract commonly renegotiated contract clauses so that contract managers become familiar with them. Or indeed, isolating contractual dates such as the due date to sign. So that's machine learning. Now there's a concept or a tool called NLP, natural language processing. And that's concerned with computer-human language interactions, which are systems that can understand and analyze language data. So examples of those are Alexa, Siri, Grammarly, Google Docs. The machine in those cases interprets intention based on predictable patterns. You can see that there would be loose ends here from a legal perspective, which is why we all still need a trusted legal advisor to preempt legal contract risk, because predicted patterns don't include that, I'll call it human consciousness that understands purpose over process. Putting contract purpose over contract process is at present what humans can do. So you see in this blue graphic here on the screen, machine learning solves one problem but presents more issues. It's a form of, shall we say, artificial narrow intelligence. Now we are advancing into artificial general intelligence, AGI, also sometimes called AI, strong AI or deep AI. That's a concept of the machine with general intelligence that mimics human intelligence, with the ability to think, understand, learn, apply its intelligence to solve any problem that humans can do in any given situation. Colloquially, we are moving from that initial fake or artificial intelligence to AGI, in other words, imitation intelligence. But AGI is still a future reality. So in the case of when you're negotiating contractual terms, a certain amount of human instinct and higher understanding, that consciousness, still needs to come into play. So it may be, for example, to you that a brand name is much more important than the lowest price. And you can't necessarily put that into data because there are nuances within what I just said. If it can't be directly programmed into a machine, the odds are that it won't be able to make heavy intellectual decisions. And at this stage, this ability is still reserved for the part within all of us that is called human. We have a long time till we get to the level of machine consciousness, where machines are smarter than the human brain in practically every field. We still need that mix of machine intelligence and human consciousness. Humans are the only species so far, for example, that can ask the question why, or at least that can answer it. If, for example, which I just did for this webinar, I went on to the rawest form of AI, Siri, and I asked a basic question: is God real? The answer that comes out is, it's all a mystery to me, said Siri. I did exactly the same thing this morning with ChatGPT. I asked the same question and it came up, spat out a disclaimer. It said it was incapable of having any personal opinions, and it went on to say that good faith is an irrational belief. Okay, so where does things like ChatGPT fit into our contracting space? Chat-based generative pre-trained transformer, GPT, is a powerful large language model chatbot. Take care, for example, with uploading any sensitive contract data into it, because what you upload could be ingested as training data and later potentially resurface when prompted with the right queries. Also, be very mindful you might be receiving information that is either trademarked, copyrighted, or third-party owned IP, raising risks for your employees. Another issue with the generative pre-trained AI model is that it's not suitable to provide a complex contract template because the terms and conditions depend on so many things, such as, for example, the nature and purpose of the agreement, or the parties' relationship with each other, or the jurisdiction that you're operating under. So legally and commercially, it's not suitable to provide a one-size-fits-all contract template because contract excellence requires a fitness for purpose on a case-by-case basis, taking into account things that cannot always be converted into data sets. For example, here is the disclaimer that popped up under ChatGPT when I asked it to provide me with a confidentiality template. It said, and I quote, "Since AI-generated contracts are a relatively new development, it's possible that there may be legal challenges or uncertainties that could impact their validity. It's always a good idea to have a legal professional review any contract," said ChatGPT, "including those created by AI to ensure their validity and enforceability." So at this point of its maturity, ChatGPT isn't the tool to use to draft complex contracts. There are a lot of other GPT tools trying to become specialists, by the way. I've heard of legal tools being developed rapidly. For example, there's one out there called LawGPT, which claims to improve access to legal services as a 24/7 legal assistant bot. But a caveat with this sort of thing too, the first responsibility for a legal decision ultimately lies with the person who made it. For a legal AI tool to be credible and useful, it must provide clear and understandable explanations for its recommendations. And secondly, responsibility for contract outcome must be clearly established, defining the roles and responsibility of the chatbot and its human users. There are also other legal and ethical questions, such as data privacy, intellectual property, as I alluded to before, and the use of sensitive or confidential information. As always, technology is moving so fast, we need to catch up with the right level of regulations and laws. So watch this space for new laws brewing in the area of artificial intelligence and contracts. Overall, external artificial intelligence tools can't currently replace the expertise of a lawyer writing contracts that protects the business owner in a transaction. AI such as ChatGPT and others is highly dependent on the quality and accuracy of the prompts given by the user. So in the case of legal contracts, it's important for the client to understand their contract requirements to prompt ChatGPT or others to generate an appropriate response. For example, if a contract manager wants a quick service agreement and they type in, "I want a quick service agreement," you could access templates, but be careful what you ask for. For example, do you need a quick service agreement or a recurring services agreement or a basic services agreement? So currently, GPT's lack of human judgment on your prompts and discretion impacts the quality and accuracy of legal contracts it generates. Also, by the way, there's a high risk of incomplete or ambiguous contracts that don't comply with law, the sort of issues that we see go to court all the time. But there is an abundance of contract software programs using artificial intelligence, and it offers contract intelligence engines that are built on the foundation of machine learning that just need to be fed relevant contract data. Artificial intelligent contract software is designed to streamline process, and it could transfer static contract documents and data into dynamic building tools, which improve oversight of a contract process, identify opportunity, and mitigate risk. For example, contract managers can identify employee task completion, how quickly they can turn this around. They can promote accountability and speed and identify bottlenecks, all in the efficiency space, giving insight into why some contracts are being delayed, for example. And contract managers can use this to reassign roles, tasks, and even evolve processes. That's the beauty of using an AI-driven contract software. AI contract management can also track risk through a digitized contract risk matrix, Some of the contract management courses run include contract risk assessment, and we run courses on contract intelligence tools, and artificial intelligence is helping to make these areas much more efficient. So come to some of our courses and consider what would be, part of your toolbox to improve your contract management skills. In the book that I wrote, Making Contracts Work, there's an order form which is attached to the chat of this webinar at the end. I defined the theory of contract lifecycle management, now used by organizations to identify contract governance through each of the 4 stages of the contract lifecycle. Now, this 4th stage, contract review, demands a significant amount of human expertise. Machine learning and AI can help automate some of the tedious parts of the process. But for example, when it comes to things like variation management, these decisions should not be automated. Contract review software, it can be really useful using AI. It's best suited though for triage and fact extraction from legal contracts at volume. So if you have huge amounts of contracts, it could be really useful to ease the burden of keeping track of similar pieces of information across documents, something human brains aren't very good at, but at which computers excel. Now, we might call this the administrative work of contract review. If machine learning can take on more of this administrative work, it frees lawyers and contract managers to focus on the valuable human work clients care about, with improved outcomes overall, and indeed happier clients. So I suppose you could, before we go to the next poll, talk about the benefits of artificial intelligence in essence. It can definitely, in a contract space, increase visibility of data, enforcing contractual terms for better business outcomes, track and trigger the impact of legal change on your contract, changes of law, and sort things by meaning, not by key search word, as in deep machine learning. It could also enable supplier performance and obligation fulfillment tracking, and using insights for potentially renegotiating strategies to facilitate smarter, data-backed decision-making. But regarding an artificial intelligence-led contract draft, well, we currently train people to automate meaning to words in documentation to avoid ambiguity. It's very useful to that. It's very useful to standardize contract management process. And also, we can see that it expedites negotiation cycles by up to 50%. So it has its benefits. It can also tailor contracts to comply with company policies. And this is a beautiful use. It makes sure, for example, that basic drafting errors don't occur. Like, for example, if you've got a link to a policy that's broken. And it also can easily identify third-party paperwork and scan it to discover risk elements to reduce the cost of risk. There's a lot of benefits of AI for contracts, but I'm going to go to my next poll, which is, do you, in your organization, procure artificial intelligence to manage contract effectiveness? Now, what I've talked about up till now is mainly the efficiency of contract management. Now I'm asking about effectiveness. It's either a yes or no, or starting to consider. Over to you, and you can see on the screen, largely 70% of people are saying no, and 20 to 30% are starting to consider, and 10% of you say yes. This is a very meaningful poll. It just shows where people are at. It's a newish landscape, and it's something that we can really benefit from. It can be used for all sorts of great things. So it's something to watch out for, and we can work on this in a future webinar. But now I'm going to close that poll, and I'm going to go on to one area what I really think artificial intelligence in contracts makes a huge difference, and it's what I call predictive contracting. Predictive contracting can use artificial intelligence to improve performance. And it's a surefire efficiency measure which can help with effective outcomes. Predictive contracting is when you design contracts using a technology system that helps predicts the connection between contract terms and outcomes given a set of external conditions. Predictive contracting influences the content of your agreements, identifies potentially typical clauses to use for particular types of contracts. For example, currency fluctuation clauses when you're drafting a procurement contract. Predictive contracts can enable visibility of actionable legal obligations and better use of legal and commercial talent. Again, when it comes to using AI to influence contract writing or drafting, you've got to be really careful because there are pros and cons. It's useful for contract efficiencies, but currently contract effectiveness is a different indicator. An AI contract management tool used for predictive contracting could help extract contract data from older contracts using algorithms. The question as to whether the contract itself becomes a more effective tool still remains. So predictive contracting can deal with huge volumes of contracts. It auto tags them sometimes with, for example, the names of the right companies, deadlines, automatic renewal alerts. These can all be set. This helps companies to transform their business contracting processes completely. So it is a great start. My next question and my third poll to you, because we're talking about how do you measure the success of or the effectiveness of your contract, I'm going to go to the next poll, Sushil, which I'm going to ask you, are you able to, or do you manage contracts by each or any of these 4 types of indicators? 1, deliverables, 2, milestones, 3, outputs, and 3, outcomes. And as we see this dynamic poll rolling out, we can see that the large majority of people manage their contract success via milestones. And now we're seeing some talking about outcomes, but milestones and deliverables are largely in the running. We're talking about nearly 80% of people online saying that they're managing by deliverables and milestones, which is good, but not great. It's very good. Why I'm asking this question is we need to pull ourselves up to the purpose of the contract before we start talking about the what's. The definition of contract effectiveness should revolve around contract outcomes and purpose. And the efficiency of artificial intelligence contract software frees up contract managers to deal with alignment of the contract with outcomes needed, outcomes being the benefits of the contract. Artificial intelligence uses advanced analytics for risk assessment and mitigation, and some have the ability to read agreements and highlight suboptimal terms or clauses that might not be in the interest of the organisation. It could potentially suggest alternative clauses that reduce the risk and could safeguard your organisation. It can provide actionable insights on contracts, like the obligations across geographies and the obligations using different languages. So using AI in a contract is at its best when it provides dashboards with reports on key performance indicators and service level indicators and milestones, or business payment obligations, or identifying all contracts bound by a specific regulation like quality assurance. Higher visibility into contracts enables performance tracking, improves compliance. These are all efficiency measures, and we can set alerts for these for a visible and a better negotiated contract term. But as mentioned, and I'll close this poll now, because as mentioned, I said this a moment ago, an area where AI can impact contracts is contract review timelines. Again, an efficiency measure that would impact business processes. It's estimated that average contract approval cycles take around 3 to 4 weeks. Significant time is lost in multiple reviews, as we all know, while contract signing and negotiation involves many stakeholders. So if we start using artificial intelligence-based solutions, we can integrate all those functions into one single platform and highlight changes in clauses, and it can seamlessly assimilate third-party contracts into the system, as I said. And that gives you visibility, which can be reviewed in a dashboard, in a single system, and help implement policies and compliance across the enterprise. The use of, by the way, AI in the contract lifecycle management solution lets firms compress timelines and turnaround cycles considerably. It can keep consistency, as I said, for commonly used clauses. For example, your corporate definition of confidential information. in a specific way for non-disclosure agreements. So you've got some commonality in the way all your contract managers across the organization deal with those definitions. However, from an effectiveness point of view, companies must make sure that all its divisions are on board with this definition and that changes to the definition get incorporated quickly and accurately, because variations could prove a risk. Artificial intelligent contracting software can easily keep this term consistent across the templates, and it can spot other terms that signal confidential information in NDAs from business partners, but you still need to manage that process. Being able to identify and extract key data points helps firms organize and execute contracts as well. For example, a company with a large number of vendor contracts might ensure that they're keeping track of variations in termination provisions and penalty and damage provisions, both in their own contracts and in their vendor contracts. And that's where it can be useful. But managing the variations is a huge undertaking that requires proactive organization. And AI and contract software can record and standardize provisions in the company's contract in those that the vendors send and make it far easier to identify instances of non-compliance in a very rule-based way, in a pattern-based way, and ensure that unfavorable provisions are dealt with promptly. So software out there can be used to reduce the risk of human error in contract drafting and review, but at this point in time shouldn't replace it. With the advent of AI into our contract process, the role of the contract management professional is shifting. Whereas contract compliance was previously done by an entire team, AI tools enable a well-designed software platform coupled with a few employees to do the job. And I'll talk about this towards the end when we're setting up CMOs. Rather than organizational skills being key to the role, contract managers will need a different set of skills. And these skills will enable them to manage the process and the software. Improvement to tools, content and processes will mean that contracting becomes faster, better and easier. Contracting technology is currently at a midpoint. One stream of development will be in industries with highly routinized template-based contracts where AI technology can be used in, for example, a blockchain model, allowing contracts to evolve according to the party's needs. The other main great use at the moment will be to help develop contracting standards, such as how to debate and structure certain clauses. When companies negotiate a contract, they can easily access every similar contract from the past 20 years through AI, prioritized by industry or other category, and see what wording has been most commonly used so that you can use less onerous negotiations over clauses, leading to an easier contract process and making you easier to do business with. So understanding what AI contracting tools can and cannot do is key to successful implementation. And as I just mentioned, they may offer the highest value add to companies with large volumes of contracts, cutting time spent in contract review and drafting, and companies that conduct more routinized transactions. But as this technology develops, it'll one day be useful to all companies and legal firms. So I go to my next and final poll question, which is, have you contemplated setting up a contract management office, otherwise known as CMO? It's either yes, no, or already have one. Oh, we didn't add that in. So yes or no. So currently the answer so far on the screen, 73% are saying no and 30% are saying yes. So that's an interesting dynamic, because a few months ago I ran this poll and it was the exact opposite. I help many organizations streamline their transition between old ways of managing contracts to new streamlined ways. One of the things I'm doing busily is setting up hundreds of contract management offices for client organizations. These contract management offices centralize the use of some of the tools we've discussed and specialize in managing software and using predictive contracting, just as I was talking to you. So, it's a really great way to align the terms and conditions of contracts with desired contract outcomes. CMOs are becoming the linchpin between contract efficiency and contract effectiveness. And by the way, when we say CMO, it doesn't have to be a standalone function in a side office. The best models that I've developed recently have seen business managers taking on a lead role in a virtual CMO, using AI software to communicate and contract with visibility and agility. So adopting a CMO model would be dependent, by the way, on the size of your contract portfolio, the maturity of your contract management process, the skill base of your contract managers, and also the digital maturity of your organization. But CMOs, what can they do? They can ensure that you become easier to do business with. It ensures outcome and purpose-driven contracts. It can manage executions well, as in signing of documents, and it can manage variations, expiries, renewals, integrity. It could source standard templates and better manage contract life cycles. Being a lead role, by the way, in a virtual CMO is a great way to upskill your contract managers with both efficiency and effectiveness as lead and lag indicators, making sure your contracting is at its peak performance in line with contract management excellence. Well, I've included a lot in this very short webinar, and I've scratched the surface of what we know is probably the key to better contracting in the future. So at this point, I will say thank you for listening to me. You can link in on my LinkedIn handle to hear more updates on this and about other contracting matters. I'm open to take questions, but I'm going to hand back to Sushil.
Thanks for that, Beverly. Yes, you definitely have been able to scratch just the surface on how AI has been changing contracts and the revolving dynamics around it. So if you want to hear more on Beverly, she will be running all these different courses throughout the year, both live online as in person and in different other locations and in different dates. Feel free to give me a call on the number 90804395 or email us. And please do not forget to quote the discount code WB as in webinar 23 for group discount. And we'll be running these training courses both publicly and also if you've got a larger group like 8 and above, we also organize this as bespoke in-house training programs. Shall we launch the next poll now, webinar?
I'll go forward. And the next and final poll, Sushil, we'll just have a quick dynamic feel in the room before we go to a couple of questions. Which is, do you use AI to manage contract efficiencies? Starting to consider and no. So we kind of felt this out before, but now that I've described it a little bit more, it's interesting to compartmentalize what is the true purpose of AI in its current form. And by the way, that's a moving landscape. Even today, I'm looking at, transformation of ChatGPT-3 into GPT-4, which means a whole lot of rigor and granularity in the abilities of artificial intelligence software. Terrific. Well, it's time for questions.
Yes, and I think I've received quite a few questions, Beverly, over here. Somehow similar some of the questions. I mean, I had a feeling that we'd get this question. Let me quickly pick this up. What are preferred AI contract management systems to use on major construction projects?
I particularly didn't start naming brands of software because I am very non-affiliated with any particular one type of software or company. And I think the purpose of this is to understand the relevance of it to your contracting life rather than to start talking about brands of software. There are so many out there. It would be unfair to name one to the other, even for major construction projects. And we're going to have another seminar or webinar, Sushil, I think, exactly on that topic.
Yes, yes, true.
I'll park that for now. The other question I see there is how effective is AI in formulating contractual terms and conditions, which is something that I really kind of tried to get a handle on in this very short session. And it's a good question, but I'm not, oh, you've just asked the question. So again, it really is answered in what I said, because your question is about how effective is it? Now, terms and conditions are the soul of the contract document. And the conditions as such are the terms by which you can sue for breach of contract if they're broken or breached. So it is absolutely paramount to understand commercially what terms you need in a contract and which conditions are absolutely crucial to getting your contract experience right. Therefore, be very careful in the sense that I described earlier in using artificial intelligence to make those decisions for you.
Right. Let me take one more question over here, Beverly. From the point of view of legal risk, how do you differentiate between a term and a condition?
It's very similar to the answer that I just gave, and we have a whole course on contract risk management exactly in this area. So it's not a simple straight answer, but the difference really between a term and condition is that a condition is core to the contract. It's the absolutely most essential terms which cannot be altered or broken. And if they are, then it could lead to the direst of legal remedies, which would be breach of contract.
Right. I think due to time constraint, we won't be able to take all the questions. But yeah, thank you, Beverly, for sharing your insight with us today. And I'm sure our audience find our presentation informative and thought-provoking, I would say. And to our audience, thank you for joining us today. And we hope you find the discussion on how AI is changing contracts informative and useful. Please do not hesitate to contact us if you have any further questions and would like to learn more about the services. And we look forward to hearing from you. And once again, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Sushil, and thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you.
Be in touch.